When the world feels like it's spinning completely out of control, do you try to grip the steering wheel tighter?
Most people do, yeah.
Right. I mean, do you try to force the chaos back into a neat little box, or do you look for a completely different way to navigate?
Welcome to today's deep dive. If you are fascinated by complex systems, human sense-making, and just finding your way in a really chaotic world, this one is absolutely custom-tailored for you.
It really is. The sources we're diving into today feature this highly analytical dialogue, really a stress test between a creator and a strategist.
Yeah, they are looking at a conceptual project called LUX 143.
Exactly. They aren't just discussing the project, they are actively trying to break it down to the scuds to see if its philosophical core can actually survive the real world. Which is such a cool premise. And to understand why they're stress testing it so rigorously, we have to establish the stakes right out of the gate. LUX 143 is essentially a conceptual world-building project that blends philosophy and storytelling to help human beings make sense of things.
But the creator built it while looking at some profound geopolitical turbulence.
Yes, very heavy stuff.
The sources touch on this historical context. They draw parallels to the 1930s, the Cold War era, USSR, and modern shifts between democracies and authoritarianism. The creator's psychological landscape is deeply informed by this feeling that the bullies of the world are suddenly playing without rules.
And just to be completely clear with you listening, the sources use this history strictly as a thematic backdrop.
Right,
They aren't taking any political sides, and we're looking at this impartially through that same analytical lens. It's just the historical anxiety that inspires the project's central metaphor.
Which is the lighthouse.
Exactly.
Okay.
Let's unpack this. The entire LUX 143 project revolves around lighthouses and orientation, but there's a brutal pushback from the strategist in the source material.
Oh, it's a massive critique.
Yeah, they essentially say, look, the world is dominated by hard power, armies, algorithmic manipulation, aggressive economies. Bringing a project about lighthouses and orientation to that battlefield feels a bit weak.
Like bringing daisies to face down a storm.
Yes. Like, aren't metaphors about light and navigation just painfully naive against all that?
It's the ultimate critique of aesthetic romanticism. But the strategist uses that critique to draw a hard line between two fundamentally different concepts: control versus orientation.
Which totally shifts the framework.
Because we are so conditioned to seek control, right?
Yeah.
Control feels safe. But in complex systems theory, which is the scientific backbone here, total control is mathematically impossible.
You just can't do it.
No, you cannot control a chaotic, multivariable system like global politics or the economy. And a lighthouse is the perfect embodiment of this truth.
Yeah.
Think about it. It doesn't try to dictate the weather.
Right.
It has no mechanism to force a ship to obey its light.
Right.
Lighthouses do not control the sea. They reveal direction.
That specific quote from the source is just, it's brilliant. It's the central mantra. Lighthouses do not control the sea. They reveal direction.
It changes how you interact with chaos entirely.
Because it's about giving up that illusion. I like to think of it like the difference between trying to build a massive concrete wall to hold back an ocean versus handing a sailor a compass.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Because building the wall is control. But when the storm reaches its peak and the multivariable system breaks down, that concrete wall is going to shatter. But the compass...
The compass still works.
Exactly. The compass doesn't fight the storm, it just gives you orientation. Which leads us to a pretty massive practical problem.
How to actually orient ourselves.
Yeah. If we abandon the illusion of control, how do we orient ourselves when the storm is absolutely deafening?
Well, that brings us to the concept of signal versus noise. In complex systems, when the environment is highly volatile, the sources argue you have to rely on what they call low-bandwidth guidance systems.
Which, on its face, sounds completely backward. In a noisy world, you'd think you need a louder system, right? A high-bandwidth megaphone just to be heard over the noise?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you can look back at the historical context from the sources. In noisy eras, like the 1930s, loud regimes and propaganda completely dominate the moment.
It's deafening.
It is. But loud noise is inherently exhausting. It burns through its own energy.
Yeah.
The things that actually survive those shifts of regimes and technological waves are the low-intensity signals.
Like what, specifically?
Libraries, historical archives, philosophy, humanitarian principles.
The quiet things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
LUX 143 is not just an aesthetic project. It is an architecture of orientation. The true test of a lighthouse isn't whether it can change the world or shout down the storm. It's whether it can remain a clear signal when the world becomes overwhelmingly noisy.
Think about that in your own life or your career right now. Are you exhausting yourself trying to shout over the noise? Or are you focused on maintaining a clear, consistent signal?
It's a profound shift in mental energy.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Because concepts like an architecture of orientation and sense-making in complex systems, they are brilliant, but they are incredibly dense academic theories.
Oh, absolutely. If you drop low-bandwidth guidance systems at a dinner party, eyes will glaze over.
Totally. So how do you actually get human beings to understand and use these tools?
The project solution is that you don't use theory at all. You use mythology. You use storytelling.
Because we are hardwired for stories.
Precisely. People struggle to grasp abstract philosophical frameworks, but they instantly understand a character observing the world. The sources introduce this concept of a mediator character.
Like a guide.
Yes, a guide doesn't lecture you with academic terms. Instead, they sit down and say, I noticed a strange thing today. And they use a simple story about, say, getting lost in the fog to explain deep systemic navigation.
So who is actually telling these stories in the LUX 143 universe? Because the sources map out this very specific ecosystem of characters.
They do, and each represents a different layer of the project's philosophy. At the center is Leah Belmoris.
Right, the symbolic lighthouse.
Exactly. And she actually doesn't do the talking. She represents the pure presence of light and the voice of orientation itself.
She just exists as the fixed point, but then you have the characters doing the translation, and I have to say, I am completely charmed by Barmalux.
Barmalux is a great example of the mediator.
He's a Palace's cat, right? A mantle with a little heart on his chest. And his backstory is so specific, he escaped the world of boxes.
The boring, corporate, hyper-systemic world.
Yeah, he just walked away from it.
Which is crucial for his role. He acts as the slightly ironic, warm observer. He's a guide between day and night, translating all those complex academic ideas into simple observations.
And he's not alone. There's Glimmer, the firefly.
Glimmer has a very specific purpose, especially for children.
Proving that the absolute smallest possible signal can still show the way in the dark.
Exactly. Taking low-bandwidth theory and making it visual. And rounding out the group is Elias Farrow.
The captain.
Right. He is the storyteller and the keeper of maritime memory. He roots all these abstract concepts in the tangible, gritty history of the sea.
Okay, I need to push back on this a little bit, though.
Go for it.
We just spent 10 minutes discussing the USSR, complex systems theory, and the rise of authoritarianism. And the proposed solution is a talking wildcat and a firefly.
It sounds jarring when you put it like that.
It does. Doesn't that sort of trivialize the massive philosophical roots of the project?
The strategist in the sources brings up that exact friction, but there's a deep psychological reason for it. Animal observers and borderline characters, creatures living between day and night, they are classic mythological tropes.
Because they disarm us.
Yes, they bypass human defensiveness entirely. If a politician or a philosopher tells you how to navigate your life, your intellectual armor goes up immediately.
You look for the flaw in their argument.
Right. But if an ironic cat tells you a simple story about getting lost, your guard is down. These characters deliver profound truths simply and safely.
Wow. Okay, that actually makes perfect sense. It slips right past the checkpoints. So bringing all of this together, we've journeyed from the geopolitics of chaotic systems all the way down to a firefly and a cat.
It's quite the trip.
It really is. But the ultimate takeaway for you, listening right now, is that in your own life, you don't always need to build a massive system to control the chaos around you.
You really can't anyway.
Exactly. Sometimes you just need to curate your own personal orientation field.
This raises an important question, though. The sources note that the creator of LUX 143 actually lived through 3 massive system collapses.
3 of them.
Yes, and it was living through those collapses that forged this exact navigation thinking.
Because the concrete walls kept falling down.
Precisely. And it makes you wonder, what if the moments in your life where you feel the most lost, where the systems around you have completely broken down?
Like a career path or a relationship failing.
Yeah. What if those moments of total breakdown are actually the exact conditions required for you to discover your truest, most unbreakable internal signal?
Because without the storm, you'd just keep relying on the wall. That is a heavy thought. And before we go, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over. We talked about how the loud, aggressive noise of the past eventually faded, leaving only the quiet signal standing.
The libraries and the philosophies.
Right. Well, think about the loudest, most aggressive noise in your world today. The outrage, the panic, whatever is demanding your attention right now. Imagine it 10 years from now, completely faded and irrelevant. What is the one quiet, resilient idea you possess today that will still matter then? What is the low bandwidth signal you might be ignoring right now that could actually guide you through the next decade?
That is the ultimate test of orientation.
It really is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. As you go out into the chaos this week, keep looking for the signal in the noise.